At Tech for Good Southwest, we're passionate about building momentum for the Tech for Good movement across the southwest of the UK. Our mission is to amplify the positive impact of technology in tackling societal challenges and creating stronger, fairer and more connected communities. By fostering a regional Tech for Good community, we aim to support initiatives that ensure technology serves the greater good and enable everyone to thrive in the long term. Throughout this podcast, we'll be joined by a diverse range of voices from across the tech sector, charities, investors, startups and community-driven projects as they share their stories, challenges and hopes in harnessing tech for good. Join us as we explore a world of tech for good right here in the Southwest. Brought to you by Annie, Alicia and Ariel.
Hello everyone, it's Annie here for the Tech for Good Southwest podcast, where we explore how technology can be harnessed to create positive social change across our communities, inspiring people, preserving the planet, creating places. Today I'm joined by Rasheda Fry, founder of Fosterly, a new platform that is reimagining how foster carers are recruited, assessed and supported. And drawing on her background as a social worker and her lived experience as a parent, Rasheda is building tech that's making the fostering process more human, efficient and sustainable. Rasheda, welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
Good, thank you.
Firstly, love your website, by the way. It puts some shocking statistics like front and centre on your website that there are not enough loving homes for vulnerable children. And I just want to read out a couple of those statistics. 20% of foster carers deregistered after 2 years. 9,000 additional foster carers are needed. And what really literally makes me shiver is 83,840 children are in care in the UK. I mean, that's just such harsh statistics. So yeah, you trained as a social worker, Rasheda. So what did you see in the fostering system that made you think, you know what, this could be done better?
Yeah, sure. So, yes, it's I think those statistics, just really briefly on a wider scale, obviously there are so many systemic reasons for those statistics, but what Fosterly is doing is very one part of that. And, we can look so much broader for, better early help. And I know Tech for Good gets involved in some of those services at the moment. That would all reduce that number of children needing care. So there's a whole wider systemic change that's needed. But what's really useful is that these statistics are actually being taken seriously. So we've known about this on the ground for a long time. You live and breathe it, you feel it, you see it on a Friday night when you can't find a home for a child. But the government actually had a national review of children's social care a couple of years ago, led by Josh McAllister, who's actually was the founder of the social work training program I was on Frontline, and who have supported us. And they found these statistics were really shocking, and I guess tied the experiences of foster carers and why they were leaving and why we had this shortage. And that's we're getting more of an understanding, and it's being respected a bit more, which really helps when in government, because that's where the money and the spend is going to, so we can actually make a difference. It's really exciting to see that that's being heard. But in terms of my experience and what we noticed in the system, so I used to support foster carers. So once they were approved, they have their own social worker, and we would support them to help understand, children's traumatic behaviour and how to best support them. But alongside that, I would do assessments of new foster carers, and I was actually really passionate about the onboarding process. So that first year post approval as well. I started to notice a trend if a family had had a really positive and I'd say educational assessment process. So they were preparing and learning about the task whilst they were being assessed. And there was such a different level of resilience and kind of readiness for fostering. And when you combine that with, good matching, post approval, good support, you end up with a foster carer, in my opinion, that is able to continue to provide homes for years and years and years, compared to what I was seeing continuously, which were foster carers just leaving after a year. I mean, there was one opportunity where we had a foster family assessed, fantastic offering. But because of their assessment experience that they'd had, And it was an unfortunate one, I think, assessor, had gone off sick or something. But because there wasn't that good experience, they actually deregistered the day they were approved. And
Oh
it
my
costs
gosh.
about £20,000 in resources minimum to recruit a foster family. So we just lost that immediately. And they also had a terrible experience. They wanted to offer their home, and
Mm.
you know they felt they couldn't trust the agency. So yeah, that's kind of a snippet into the issue, I guess.
Yeah, and so in terms of what is fosterly, because there's a lot in that. There's obviously a lot of complexity in the foster care system, and a lot of, I guess, the way things have been working for a really, really long time. So kind of taking it on in terms of, okay, what part of this system can we actually start making a difference in? Can you tell us a little bit about what is fosterly in your own words, and who are you designing it for?
So, Fosterly, I would describe it as a digital assessment process. So, it's streamlining the foster care assessment journey, and that is what the focus is. And we do that using good tech and good user experience, and particularly the points. So, one I described, poor communication, the points where there are blockers or delays or points of disappointment for carers. We have put technical features in place to try to overcome those, to make that experience smoother and kind of to work with the complexity of the social care system and bring. We are for local authorities and private agencies, but we would like to bring local authority quality up with the private sector. So they are actually really seeing assessing a foster carer as it's like a HR experience. It's very similar in the checks and references you have to do, but there's also a huge holistic side. And too often, social workers are spending too much time on the admin and kind of trying to sticking plaster that process, that they're not getting enough time for the depth and breadth of the work that their expertise is in and would help foster carers to understand the role. So our tech has been built to basically enable that process to happen. So we have kind of shareable homework tasks, and that was one of the things that kind of encouraged me to do fosterly. Was I was sat trying to set some homework for a foster carer, and I was looking in this OneDrive and in this folder and
Hmm.
in all these different places trying to piece it together. And it took so long, and I would write this email from scratch, and it was just very clunky and slow. And we've just actually reduced that down to send a homework task takes 5 seconds with Fosterly, whereas it's
Wow.
taken about 40 minutes previously.
Yeah.
So that's generally an example of what Fosterly does. Fosterly's quite the fostering assessment process is lengthy, for good reason and for bad. It
Yeah.
needs to be a thorough assessment, so it can take 3 to 12 months. Good practice is about 4 months. However, we're cautious about using time as an impact measurement because sometimes there's genuine reason for it to take so long, of course. But we really want to bring that down. We want to stop delay for the sake of delay. So if there's somebody does go off sick, which happens, in social care, it's a very stressful job. Then the manager gets prompted and immediately can step in and add somebody else to the chat inside Fosterly. So it really is designed to work with the complexity of social work, I'd say.
Yeah. Can you just explain a bit so about the context? Obviously, there seems to be a sort of big private sector in foster care. There's obviously the sort of public sector system, and there's what you're creating. Can you kind of explain how that works, and how big is the private system for this?
This always surprises people when we speak about Fosterly. This is one of the few things I think in social care that still is heavily privatised. So you have the local authority fostering agencies. So it's just it's a department in social care, and that's where my experience is from. I've only ever worked for local authority fostering. And that's about a third of the market. And then you have the other two-thirds of fostering agencies are privately owned or charities. So you have a mix, but they are termed independent fostering agencies, so they're known as IFAs. And it costs the local authority double to place a child with an IFA rather than in house. And that makes sense because local authorities can absorb running costs, right? So there is some in that you think, okay, well, that money is being spent elsewhere in the local authority. But it is that's kind of how it works. And understandably, the profit making agencies are perhaps more efficient, and consider, they have quite complex recruitment teams already. Whereas in a local authority, you might be lucky to have a recruitment officer. And there is a national campaign about recruitment hubs at the moment that are being tested, but they still are not as sophisticated as what the private sector has. And I really want to bring that up to the local authorities, and support them. And we were definitely on a journey. Initially, I wanted to work with local authorities. That was where my passion is. It feels right. However, I quickly learned that we had to pivot a little bit because local authorities need data to justify that they can go with something new. And IFAs have access to the purse strings a little bit more. They can take a risk in terms of piloting. So we found that actually we were better off to test our systems with the IFAs first and kind of build reputational trust for us to be able to then go into local authorities more smoothly. So that's the pattern we have learned, is that local authorities would like to follow what others do,
Yeah.
understandably, to avoid risk, right?
Yeah, so that would take longer. So in terms of the sort of competitive market, are some of these private agencies actually starting to address some of the issues that perhaps you are? Or what's a kind of competitive market for you? Or do you think you're sort of pretty unique in this space?
So we are absolutely not a fostering agency because we don't provide our own foster carers to provide homes for children. So they are not our direct competitors. However, there will be some very large independent agencies that will have their own teams that would kind of, I guess, mean that maybe Fosterly might not be needed for them at this point. Or what we're finding is that they're spending a lot on employment and other systems that they're shoehorning fostering into, which happens everywhere. Or that there's no kind of real no system working for fostering alone that people seem to be happy with. So there are competitors. So one of the main systems that are used in private agencies is called Charms. But that is very much a CRM. So it's used post approval as well. And it's not specifically used for the assessment process. And although it has that functionality, our research shows that agencies are not actually using that functionality. They have their own workarounds. So they're a competitor, but they're probably not direct competitor. And I think there is some innovation in the space, but everyone's taking it slightly differently. I think it's such a complex problem. Everyone's got their own kind of solution for it. And mine very much comes from the hypothesis of, if, with a better assessment experience, we will have improved retention, longevity of carers, and a better experience for them, and really change the culture for foster carers, because at the moment they don't feel that they're viewed as professionals. And that debate still very much exists, which I think is ridiculous because they are so much, very much a profession.
Yeah,
That I think if we
absolutely.
provide them with a professional system and access and transparency to their assessment process, then we can actually start to change that, because they feel they have more ownership, and it tells other people, okay, this is almost like an employment route. It is a profession. It's not just, I think some people think, of some, bored person at home wanting to do something extra. It's so the opposite of that.
Yeah, there's multiple levels of change that you're addressing. So it is complicated, isn't it? In terms of what you're building. In terms of your sort of startup journey, I know you've had a child fairly recently, or certainly within this kind of startup journey. And I noticed in one of your articles or some or on your website, the words that you used were slow, thoughtful, grounded in real life. We were not in a rush in terms of setting up the business, or setting up this, I guess, idea and trying to make it real. So I'd really love to hear a bit about the startup journey. Like, how did it actually then come from, okay, I've seen the problems, I know what we need to address, I know that we need to go in a particular way to do it. So how have you practically gone about creating space for you to work on this, and where it is today?
Yeah, it's been a real journey. It's funny thinking of it like that, because you just get on to the next thing each day, don't you? Um, Yeah, I didn't mean to start Fosterly when I had a 3-month-old, but that is what happened. I think I was really inspired. I kind of Fosterly, I left a local authority. Kind of, it was just the right time, and I worked for another one as an agency worker for a little while, and I really learned how things could be different. So they had their assessment structure was really different, and it was really difficult because we just did not have enough carers. It was even more scarce than the local authority I was at before. And, we were placing 10-year-olds in Airbnbs with like a mentor. That is the reality. It doesn't happen all the time, but it doesn't not happen. And it's really awful. And I think it really shocked me when I became a parent. Um it really hit me in a really different way, and I really felt guilty that I was able to kind of look after my child, and not need foster care. And I think you go through those emotions. You get that extra empathy when you become a mother,
For sure.
and I also was able to zoom out. So because I wasn't dealing with the direct day to day kind of crises in social care, I kind of looked at it from an outside perspective. I think that's what happened. And I was like, this could be really different. Let's think about this differently. And I had an email from the Frontline Innovation Program. So they're a boot camp, social care specific. And saying, look, if you've got an idea of how to improve social care, we want to hear about it. And it was the day I was registering my son in Bristol. I was at the coffee shop and I saw it and I was like, oh, that sounds really exciting. And I think I had a moment of like, let's see if we can do something. And I think our startup journey is slightly different because my husband, George, who's also very involved in Fosterley, he he's done a lot of entrepreneurial stuff. He's set up businesses before. He's got, a master's in entrepreneurship, and been through kind of the old eSpark in Bristol. Definitely, we've learned a lot of things along the way about that. So I was able to take his expertise about the best way to go with this. So we started really lean. We did a bit of contracting for a designer to kind of mock up what things could look like. We had the sticky notes on the table, mapping out the current assessment process and where are the problems. It was very much like that at the beginning. And it was stolen evenings here when I had, my son slept a little bit here. Definitely lots of pitching whilst feeding my son in the background, about here. And it was, yeah, very much just mashing it together just to see. But I absolutely did not put the pressure on that I had to be behaving like other founders or, the typical founder of eating baked beans every day and, not sleeping, working day and night, because that just wasn't an option for me. And I also was not willing to sacrifice that time with my son either. So balance for me as a founder has been like top of my mind the whole time because of that, which I think has really helped with sustaining momentum. Of course, there's been late nights. Of course, there's been stressful moments. But when that happens, I will then factor a day later in that week to then go, okay, well, I'm going to take an extra day with my son then, or I'm going to actually put him in a nursery an extra day because he's been sick all week and I haven't been able to get anything done. And it's just kind of managing that balance. So yeah, and then we've had our incubators and our support. I don't know if we wanted to talk about that later, but
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a good point, actually, to lead on to. Obviously, you were wanting to make sure that you could grow sustainably. You obviously had a young child to look after, but also learning so much along the way, obviously, in terms of bringing your career knowledge in one space into sort of quite a different environment. I think you've had two, is it Frontline Innovation Program, and then you've also had Bethnal Green Ventures. Can you just explain a little bit about what those are, but also how were you able to commit to those programs, I suppose, within obviously the time and space that you were allowing yourself to work on the business?
yeah, so the Frontline Innovation Program was in two parts. So it was very early. It was within the first kind of 2 months of Fosterly. So we tested feasibility and we built Fosterly within that. So what was really good, so Frontline Innovation Program is social care specific innovation. So they bring in business coaches and the experts from the frontline team to help you realize kind of your innovation. And for me, that was a business. For some people, that was a program within the local authority. And that first of all was sort of online. It was one day in London, things that we could kind of very much manage. And then later there was a full week boot camp that we got through to. That was, yeah, really tough. However, they were brilliant. They actually funded my husband to come and stay with me, and to bring the baby because I was still feeding. I needed to be around.
Wow.
So they had quite a week in London. Very bizarre. Um, and but it was great because it meant I could really focus. And what I really liked about the Frontline program was that it was you were getting stuff done for your business while you were learning. So yes, you had the expertise, but we were applying it as we went through. So it was really time efficient because they appreciated that social workers don't have a lot of time. Most of them are taking a week's holiday to do this. I was in a very privileged position to not have to do that. So it was, yeah, it was really, really good timing.
Was that
We
a government program? The Frontline Innovation Program, is that funded by government? And did you apply to it, or did they find you?
So it isn't government funded. So Frontline is a charity and they do get funding from the Department of Education, but their innovation program is
Wow.
actually, I think it's funded by philanthropy. It's and yeah, that fundraising. So we were really grateful to be part of that, and it was something we had to apply to. So there was an application process, and then the first part of that program, you then had to apply for the second part for the boot camp, which we got through to, and then at the end you can pitch for some funding. And we didn't actually get the funding, but we did get support from them. So they gave us some collaboration with Boston Consulting Group, which was
Wow.
fantastic.
Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
so it's not
Great
just
start.
yeah, it was really useful, and they had the contacts. They know social care, and that's so difficult. You said about you're bringing something into a different world. Um, they kind of bridged that gap for us at the early stage.
And then you joined Bethnal Green Ventures program, didn't you, for Tech for Good startups? At what point was that after you'd finished obviously the Frontline Innovation program? Did you apply to that again, and tell us a little bit about how that's been for you?
Yeah, so that was the November we'd applied for the boot camp, for the funding with Frontline, and found out we weren't successful. We had already planned to apply with Bethnal Green Ventures and an Innovate UK Design Foundations grant. We were going to do some analysis to prove what we did had impact. So those were the two things we were applying for through Christmas, and we were successful on the Bethnal Green Ventures one, as you said, which we're really pleased.
Mm.
There's a really small percent get through, and we were really, really grateful we couldn't quite believe it. But actually, as we've got to know them and we were on the program from March, over that time, I kind of was like, okay, I understand the fit because they are looking for a very specific, you need to kind of have a personal experience or industry experience and then find that tech solution, and you need to be at the
Yeah.
right stage, and I think we were just in that niche, and it was just the I think it's the best thing that's happened to us. Like, it's absolutely enabled us to go sustainably, like you say, to actually just keep going. So we've always just gone with kind of we haven't been able to employ our own tech team, and we've had to contract as we go, but it's enabled us to do that, and I think that is more sustainable. It does mean that we can iterate when we need to. We can add resource when we need to because we had that funding from Bethnal Green Ventures, which made so much difference. But on top of that, we also had loads of expertise from their mentor network, which has been just as valuable. We have a mentor, Yumi, from the team, and she's brilliant. We might share a challenge, and straight away we have all of these kind of potential solutions sent to us, and it's just not the experience of an investor that I thought we would, that you typically think of. They really are all about finding the right people to support you. Um, yeah, to kind of, and they really believe in you. And I think that really helps because you need that as a founder, right? Because one minute everything's great, and then you think, oh no, I don't know where I am anymore. And they've really helped with that journey too. So yeah, that's definitely been a big part of Fosterly.
Yeah, a big part of the journey. Just wanted to talk a little bit actually about the sort of tech side of things. You spoke just earlier around right at the beginning, looking at those kind of points of disappointment in the sort of foster care, I guess, assessment and onboarding process. You're obviously from the sector and I'm not, but it feels like it's such a human-centered process, because it is about trying to make sure that we do have enough families and that children can move into sort of loving homes. How are you kind of striking a balance between where the technology is front and center versus those points where you do actually need to have that human connection as part of the process?
Yeah, I think this is something that's always on my mind, is thinking, is this a helpful tech thing, or is this just because we can do it?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that's a balance you need to find. And also, you really need to think about unintentional consequences. And this is something we learned from Bethnal Green Ventures, was we're coming from a really positive place and thinking this is going to, because we're saving a social worker time, they're going to spend more time with the family to do that
Yeah.
depth and breadth. Well, we don't know that for sure. You would hope so, because social workers have certain values that they have to obviously have. But we definitely made things not functional in certain areas where you could perhaps do something for speed rather than quality. And so, there have been times where you could say, okay, we could do this, and it would speed things up, but there's a risk there that someone might misuse that. So we've not enabled that. So there's a real balance there. But in terms of kind of using the tech to its full advantage, the fostering assessment process is split in legislation into two sections. So the first section is your typical HR checks and references, lots of linear data. Yes, it's very personal data, but it's not qualitative. It's dates, it's, evidence. And in that section, there's a lot of conditional logic, a lot of automation, a lot of tech being done there. And then when you get to stage two, which is more about, ultimately, you're making an assessment to their suitability to foster, and everything within that falls under there. There's less tech going on there. There's less, it's good user experience. It's nice to use. We've got shareable tasks to get the applicants involved as much as possible through this sort of
Mhm.
home learning. But by no means is it making it replacing the human element. It really is for that breadth and depth. And part of that, we've also included kind of some information icons where it sort of explains how you should use this. So send this ahead of the visit so that you can get some depth and breadth before you go and do your home visit and talk about this in more detail. So it's really making clear that this is not a replacement for a visit. This is how you use it. And that will be part of our training. So, local authorities and agencies would have training, and we would be really clear about how this is going to give you more time for that depth and breadth that you want all the time. Social workers say, admin gets in the way of that actual real social work. Well, what we hope is that we've enabled more time for the nice social work side of things, the
Yeah.
analysis.
I think what you've really highlighted to me there is the difference that comes from when you're putting technology out there that is designed with and by and for the problems it's seeking to solve, because you're going to always champion that human bit. That's going to be your role because you've lived and breathed this process. And that's something that we always advocate for as Tech for Good as well. It's that kind of, you need to engage with the communities or the people that are experiencing those issues, and we surprisingly just see so little of that. And that's definitely our advocacy to the wider tech sector. But that probably leads me to, dare I ask you, where does AI then come into what you're building in your roadmap at the moment? How are you thinking about that?
Yeah, so definitely on the roadmap. It's already entered social care, which is really exciting. So I've met some local authorities who are using kind of transcription AI support, something that I just thought would be years down the line because it can be so slow. And what I'm finding is that they have an appetite for it. So I'll do a demo about Fosterly and go, but does it have AI? I really thought that was gonna be a fight that we were gonna have to have, this tech is for you. This is something that's gonna really help you. And actually people are already really excited about it. So that really helps because, again, those time savings, I don't need to explain that AI will obviously make those. Because so much of an assessment is information gathering, and it's the information gathering elements that can have that time saved. There is a lot of debate in social care around use of AI for analysis.
Yeah.
It's, it's interesting because there's so much there's a gut instinct that's really important in social work, but there's an argument as to where that comes from. And some people are saying that AI actually can be more like objective, so there's no bias. So there's a real interesting debate there. I'm not going to say where, I think we should
Well,
be.
yeah.
But I think for us at Fosterly, it definitely will be in kind of the home visit recording, bringing in lots of data. And I've in our user research, so we've used Fosterly with foster carers, social workers, we've tested out and got their opinions, and everybody felt that AI would be a really positive addition to Fosterly. However, the main kind of technical features for Fosterly at the moment are kind of automation and smart logic, that saves so much time already, which people were excited about. So at the moment, we're really happy with that. But yes, we would like to have AI in our kind of Fosterly 2.0, if you like.
Yeah. So my last question on AI actually is just I'm just interested from a personal but and a founder perspective, how you're creating space, because this is what everyone's talking about, right? How do you create space in what you're already doing to actually have that thinking or curiosity sort of time to actually say, okay, is this something I need to think about now? When do I need to build it in? But I also need to understand and learn for myself, for the business. Have you done anything sort of practical around that, or had a bit of a play, gone on to any sort of courses, or are you just sort of absorbing more broadly within the circles that you're in?
Well, we did have a bit of a play actually at a Google session with Bethnal Green Ventures, with their Gemini. And it was an activity where we just had to create something with AI. And we created a virtual supervisor for a fostering home visit. And
Oh,
we did it in
cool.
10 minutes. We did it in 10 minutes. And it was someone called Sarah. And you could say, hey, Sarah, like, ask me about my visit. And it created this huge visit note we did on the character of Friends. Um, and it worked really well. So that was a bit of testing for me. And straight away, I put it on the roadmap. And we now have a CTO, and we have our developer who's contracted but is very much part of our team. And we do talk about, future things as part of our weekly meetings. So there's always a space for kind of, obviously we're dealing with kind of the current sprints, we're dealing with, bugs or things that have come up and what we need to fix. But also there's always a time for how we can improve stuff. And our developers have got great initiative and is really keen to always do that. So it's very much always in the discussion for us. So I don't imagine it dropping off the radar. We've got the space for it for sure.
Yeah, amazing. And I suppose going back to obviously the actual issues here that you're addressing through Fosterly, what does success look like for you and for the children, those 83,000 children who are in care, but obviously all those that are need to continue to be supported, but also to find homes. What's the kind of ultimate vision that you've got?
Yeah, I think it would be a shift in trust in the fostering sector. So even children feel it. They know that the sector can sometimes be a bit of a mess, or they don't know, they're in McDonald's waiting to find out where they're going to live that night, because they know that the social workers haven't figured it out. I hope that that wouldn't be happening anymore, that it would be seen as a really efficient system, that, when your parents can't care for you for whatever reason, there is a really safe, warm hug for you to look after you. And I know that's a really nice romanticized picture, but I think that this isn't a problem that we need to worry about. And I'm not saying that Fosterly is going to do that in itself. I think there's so much innovation going in fostering that I really hope we get this right. For us, I'd really like to see assessment timescales go down, satisfaction surveys go up, retention of foster carers be longer than 2 years. That would be great. And
Yeah.
I think what we're really hoping for is, so our kind of data plan is that we would be speaking to the newly appointed social workers for new foster carers and really getting a sense of how much more ready they seem than previous other assessed foster carers. And that then we can start to look at, well, okay, but how long do they stay and what kind of foster,
Yeah.
how satisfied do they feel? So one of our foster carers that we work with, she fostered for about 20 years, I think it was. And she put it down to her assessment experience. So she said, I had actually a student and a social worker. So they took extra time to really go through the process because she was learning. And that helped me understand why I was being asked things. It wasn't so intrusive. It was like a learning process together. And, she directly puts that to how she managed to foster for so long, and also to be so much more caring and open-minded with children because she understood it better. Um,
Yeah.
we'd want to see more of that.
So, what do you need most right now, given those the long-term goals, aren't they? And they're big goals. They're changing a really complex system, navigating complex sectors as well. I suppose, what do you need right now from the sort of wider ecosystem, whether that's funders, mentors, people to work with you, people prepared to obviously pilot your platform. I'm particularly interested, obviously, that's a big part of Tech for Good Southwest as well, in terms of what role can we play in supporting people like you to be successful on your journey. You've done so much already. But yeah, interested in what you see either for yourself or for others on a similar Tech for Good journey.
Yeah, I think for where we are now, we're definitely thinking more strategically and more. We're thinking about scale. So the people that we've spoken to about Fosterly agencies, they like what they see so far. We're very early in pilot and sort of sign offs and things like that. But so we don't have that impact data yet. But what we have is that people are excited. There's an appetite for it, and it's being talked about. So which is lovely. So what I'm hearing is that people would like to try us. What the difficulty is it's mainly me, and it's
Yeah.
my capacity to be able to go and do that outreach. And we're having real success with warm introductions versus cold outreach, and I think that goes across the board to most
Yeah.
good, right? So I'm looking for networks, and kind of, introductions to fostering agencies in particular. One, to see if they want to pilot with us, but also we do a lot of consultation with people in agencies to learn about their needs so we can continue to develop things for what they need. We are also looking at kind of our fundraising roadmap at the moment and when the right time with that would be. Very much a lot going on in government at the moment in fostering, so we also have to align kind of quite smart with that. So we're kind of keeping an eye on lots of things going on at the moment. You wouldn't think it, but fostering has a lot of investment at the moment, even though kind of social care in general, it
Mm.
doesn't look like that's the case. And I really am excited to become more of a part of kind of, so obviously we're from Bristol, so we're in the southwest. We've been engaging in London so far. So Frontline's been in London, Bethnal Green Ventures is in London. So I'm really excited to have something a bit more local, and because I think Bristol automatically kind of tech for good and kind of social impact is just in the culture of Bristol, isn't it? There's a lot going on. And I haven't tapped into that yet. So I'm really excited to sort of see if what's around, what support we could have. And you know what it's like, talking to another founder just helps anyway. I think because you understand and they might know someone. So that I'm really keen to get involved.
Yeah, it's being alongside others, isn't it, on a similar journey. What does
Yeah.
what does Tech for Good mean to you personally?
For me, it's opportunity
Mhm.
for efficiencies and making change. So it's really difficult when you're a social worker. You don't see change quickly, very rarely.
Mhm.
You're probably not involved anymore when there's a positive change from something you've done. It's like a drip effect. And I think you can maybe, and I'm sure it's the same in Tech for Good, really. It takes a long time, but I do feel like I can make a difference with tech.
Mhm.
And you experience it day to day yourself in all aspects of your life, don't you? How much easier is it now we have the NHS app to, get a prescription or something like that. And I think there's just a real opportunity here
Yeah.
with Tech for Good. And it doesn't feel, I think I always really struggled with being a social worker and going into business and kind of profit
Mhm.
being this dirty word. And we shouldn't have
Yeah.
this at Frontline. And actually, when you use it right and you have the right values, you can use that for more impact. It doesn't mean that, you're doing it for the wrong reasons, and what even is the wrong reason. So it's for me, I'm really excited to be in the Tech for Good space. And there's just so much going on in,
Yeah.
lots of innovations doing brilliant stuff. So I'm really excited.
And you are absolutely Tech for Good, and 100% making change. And it's been really inspiring listening to you've got so much knowledge obviously around the system that you're seeking to not change, but actually evolve and support and ultimately impact the lives of very many thousands of children. So I hope that there are people that will listen to this that either have some networks to connect you to, or mentors, or want to get on board and support you and bring some skills into what you're doing, because yeah, this is a big system and a long journey. But I think obviously what we're trying to build through Tech for Good is that or at least those kind of connections where they don't exist otherwise, into to people on a similar journey. So thank you so much for sharing your story so eloquently and fluidly as well. Thank you. And can you just maybe finish by telling people how they can find out about you and what you're up to? I think there's a launch of a new website coming up that I'm sure people will see by the time this goes live. But yeah, how can people find out about you and get in touch?
Yeah, so it's fosterly.com. We are quite vocal on LinkedIn in particular. And as we're B2B, we are, yeah, not across all socials yet, but LinkedIn is definitely the place to look. And yeah, we will have a really exciting new website launch, hopefully next week, maybe week after. But yeah, by the time this goes live, which has a lot more, like you can look at a demo, lots more visuals to look at. I think at the moment our website is very much about the problem, and now you'll see kind of
Yeah.
the solution, which yeah, really exciting.
Fabulous. Excited. Well, let us know so that we can share that obviously within the community and beyond. And thank you so much for taking the time to share the story in a busy founder's life. And thank you to everybody that's listening to the Tech for Good Southwest podcast. We'll obviously share the details for Fosterly in the episode notes. So thank you so much, Rasheda, for joining us. Thank you.
No, thank you for having me.